mean, I guess as a thought experiment,
Yeah.
that makes sense. But for practical purposes, yeah, I couldn't see.
Yeah. Someone's asking about Bridgman and Hogarth. Have you studied them at all?
Bridgman extensively. I love Bridgman. He's very foundational for me. I had an artist named Kyle Hotz. He's an incredible artist, still working, who was one of the first people to look at my art at a convention, and he recommended that I look at Bridgman. This is Bridgman's Guide to Life Drawing, and copy every picture in the book, and then close the book. Obviously, I couldn't do it. I would look at the picture, close it, and then try and do my own version. And I went through the entire book twice that way, and it made an enormous difference. I was a different artist afterwards.
Nice.
And I feel like it's very foundational to everything that I do. Hogarth, I have not really looked at all, and it's a sensitive topic because the last thing I want to do is say something negative about Hogarth, and I don't mean it, because you have to look at what works for you. For me, Hogarth didn't work for me. It's just stylistically I couldn't reconcile it. So it's not negative. I didn't find it for me.
Yeah, it makes sense. I feel like both Hogarth and Bridgman have very, very specific styles. Like Bridgman is very heavy with his style on structure, right? Like he'll destroy the accuracy of something to just make sure it's structurally sound and interesting, right? And then Hogarth is the opposite, where he'll destroy the structure of something to make sure that the gesture is like super dynamic, and to the point where it sometimes breaks everything so much that it just doesn't even look good.
Yeah,
so
and
dynamic.
I really struggled with trees and rocks and anything organic for a long time because I just needed that structure. Like it was so it was something I could kind of grasp onto, and so I think that's why Hogarth. I struggled with it.
Yeah, and for me, like gesture isn't about making everything super curvy and dynamic. Like sometimes the structure needs to have a feeling of solidity. Like this thing is solid and strong. That's part of gesture, and so you got to include some elements of structure in your gesture. That's my personal opinion about Hogarth. Is sometimes he doesn't follow that. He'll just make everything noodly.
Yeah, which I think is great.
Yeah, sometimes it works.
I think it's great in conjunction with other things.
This one's, I think, a question that a lot of people probably have. I've been studying drawing fundamentals seriously for 1 year, and my goal is to do comic art, penciling. What percentage of my study time would you recommend using to draw from imagination versus copying comic masters? So like master studies versus practicing fundamentals. So those three things. How did you spend your practice time during your formative years?
I'm going to say I probably spent about 50-50. What I would do is I would spend a couple hours just copying, like Alan Davis is a great artist, worked for Marvel and DC and still is. That's really influential for me. And I would draw, 10 faces from Alan Davis, and then I would just try and draw some of my own, and that's when things would really grind to a halt, but I would spend, a couple hours doing that. And I tried to schedule my time too. And so I would say, okay, this week I'm going to work on arms. And I would even write notes to myself, like everything that I'm trying to learn. I have pages full of this useless, I'd never read it again. I've actually gone back and looked at this. It's very embarrassing to read some of that stuff, but I did it. And, just to organize my thoughts, studying that stuff. But you can't learn if you aren't taking in new information, and you can't internalize it if you aren't making it your own. So you do need to do both. And I'd say 50-50 is a good.
Do you want to talk a little bit about your drawing before we move on to more questions? What do you? I mean, I think we haven't even talked about the drawing at all. So maybe let's
okay. So I have to admit, I didn't make the arm quite as big as I could have.
That's okay. I felt guilty trying to influence your drawing, so.
I really don't mind at all. I don't mind. But so for your figure, he's obviously got P for Proko. He's like your standard kind of Captain America sort of hero, and then I'm drawing Marshall as a villain, and I'm kind of making it. He's gonna have a skull here, I think. That'll kind of work. You go put some skulls on his belt.
Nice. Is he a villain or is he?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Okay, cool.
Like I said, he's not here to defend himself.
Nice. That's great. So is he partnering up with Skelly? Is that why he's got skulls?
Actually, that is. So that's actually a good idea for a logo. It's Skelly.
Skelly is
Thinking about.
Oh man, Skelly and Marshall teamed up against me. I love it. I'm sure this isn't nearly as exciting for everybody watching as it is for me. I'm just here to enjoy this.
Really different for me. I'm used to drawing like every live stream that I'll draw, Wolverine or Captain America or Batman. I don't usually just try and make something up as I go along. So with likenesses too.
You did a great job. I could totally tell that's me and Marshall.
I think somebody would have to. You'd have to know. That's the problem.
I mean, well, yes, okay. I mean, I guess so because it's still kind of at a line drawing stage. You didn't caricature much to like really reveal a specific character, but
yeah, it's just not in my skill set to do that. Unfortunately, there are comic artists. J. Scott Campbell is phenomenal at that, but yeah, I don't do that well.
Oh man, I love it. Marshall's got spikes. Have you thought about like our powers and stuff?
Oh yeah, I know all that stuff totally.
Oh, so what's my power?
I didn't know you were gonna actually.
Oh, you don't want to say?
No, I have no idea.
Oh, okay.
Oh
No,
no,
you're sarcastic. Okay.
Yeah, no, that's a lot deeper than I was thinking.
Okay.
This is part of the reason why I'm bad with caricature. And you know what? I'm gonna say part of the reason why I love comics is, and I love people, but again, I'm a real introvert, and I tend to not be people focused as much as I could be. And so, yeah, you asked me what their powers are, and it has not even crossed my mind because I just don't think like that. It's.
I guess you're used to people coming to you with the story already established.
There's not really much light shown up.
I am, yeah, for sure.
Have you ever made your own comic?
I have. It's been a long time. I did a couple of creator-owned comics back in the 90s at the first company that I worked for Mark Silvestri at Image Comics. And I have not. When I did them, I thought, I could do this anytime. So when I left the books, I thought, I'll just make another one. And then I started at Marvel and DC, and I have not had a chance to go back. So, and I'm doing a creator-owned comic now, but I'm doing it with a writer. So I have that kind of safety net of somebody that actually thinks these things through, which is great. Yeah, really, I need it.
Yeah, maybe people in the comments you could suggest some powers for Marshall and I, based on what David has already drawn.
Yeah, that would be very helpful. I would appreciate it.
And then John in the Slack, if you see any good ones, shoot them over. Let's see. I'm finding it difficult to get back into drawing. I find myself drawing for a few days and then I stop drawing. I really want to get excited about my drawing, but it doesn't feel like it's there. Any advice on recovering from this?
I wish I could say that that's not a problem, or it's a problem that's just easy to overcome. The fact is that drawing is, especially when you're learning, a very, very mentally draining and taxing and emotionally difficult thing to do because you put your ego on the line every time you draw a picture, and so you have to acknowledge that it's a tiring, difficult thing to do, and be gentle with yourself. At the same time, you need to be disciplined, and that really is the answer. It's like everything, and I feel so hypocritical in saying that because I've been trying to get the discipline to start exercising this year, and it has not happened. So, but if that's what you want to do, and it's drawing, you need to acknowledge the fact that you're not going to want to do it a lot of the time. It's not going to go easily. You're not going to enjoy it. Drawing pictures for a living, there are not too many jobs that compare. It's a great job. I love it. But there are times
Crap.
I really struggle and I just don't want to be doing it. And the only way that I've been able to make it a career is to draw during those times too. So, you know, you do kind of have to decide what you really want and then push through those times. I really wish that I could say, here's a strategy for doing that. I don't know other than to just sit down and do it. I know for me, my hardest thing is email. I'm afraid of email. It's like a phobia almost. And so I actually wake up in the morning and I kind of shake my head and I just open it. And once it's open, I can do it. So, maybe that's a sit down at the table, pick up your pencil, just start, and then you'll be good.
I'm with you, man. Email is the worst.
Yeah.
My phobia for email gets worse and worse, like every month. It's like I just can't do it.
Yeah, and it's like career detrimental. It's a real problem.
Yeah. But it's like because it's impossible for me to get through everything in there. It's like it's hard to even go in.
Yep.
Yeah. Let's see. So one person, Didier, asks, I'm making my own comics, doing all by my own. So because I'm not that good yet, I don't think Image or Dark Horse or something like that is going to buy my stories. So what do you think is the best way to get stories out to the world? Like any
Newspaper.
recommendation for pages to upload comics, or a tip for someone to get his or her story published by Image or Dark Horse?
Getting published by Image or Dark Horse right out of the blue with no other experience, if you're not working with someone that does have that experience, nothing is impossible, obviously, and I wouldn't want to suggest that, but it is extraordinarily difficult, and I wouldn't set it as a goal. I would say probably a more healthy goal would be to put it out online and just put it up for free. You're doing this yourself, so there's no outlay of cost, and you're learning, and you acknowledge that it's not where it needs to be yet. So I think you really want to get that experience and do the work, but let it be what it is right now. And as you get better and you have more experience and you kind of know what you're doing, you have a few different options for getting published. One is through a publisher, and that can be difficult, but it's obviously doable. Another one is just using a Kickstarter, and this is why social media can be incredibly useful for you. You build a relationship with your audience, and for something like, for anything creative like this, we're not doing anything essential here. We're doing
I'm not thinking about
entertainment,
this at
and
the moment.
people have no obligation to enjoy your entertainment, so you want to value your customers and the people that support you as much as possible. And I think if you do that, you can create a customer base that will allow you to get your stuff out there and hopefully make a living doing it. That's a really good way to go, and I think a lot of people are having a lot of success that way.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, kind of two different routes, but neither of them are just plug and play. They both are very challenging. I would say it is easier to get working on somebody else's stuff. If you're looking to, Image or Dark Horse or Marvel, DC, all those companies, getting work just on a work for hire basis is probably a more realistic goal at first.
Yeah, it seems it's kind of odd to want to sell your comic to a big company like that when you say that you're not really good. Like you're not good yet, and so why would they pick up your stuff? I feel like what you just said, David, about using social media to try to promote it would make more sense. But if you're not good yet, and you know that your drawing quality is really not up to par to compete with all these thousands of other comics out there, I think you have to lean into it that you're not good yet. Like Dogman, or Captain Underpants, right? Those drawings aren't that good, but it's it leans into it. It's purposefully bad. Or all the web comics where they're just use stick figures. Those rely on the story to just be really good. So if that's something you are good at, you could lean into it, and you could actually get a lot of people following your stuff online. And you don't need a publisher.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, Stan, this will look better soon.
What are you talking about? It looks awesome.
It's the layout. I always feel very sensitive at this point because it's just like this flat, you know.
I think you're the only one feeling that right now. Do you actually feel like people are thinking that it's not good?
Yes, and
Oh my god!
especially you know what? It's worse. I'm over here on your channel. You know what I mean? So I feel like the pressure's on. I can't make this not be good. So yeah, that's 90% of what I'm sitting here thinking. I'm drawing, answering questions, and freaking out in my own head.
Wow. I mean, guys, if you could see that this feeling of thinking that your stuff sucks never goes away. Like this is proof of that.
Yeah.
Like even when you're as good as David, you still feel like your stuff sucks. So you're just gonna have to get used to that feeling forever.
Yeah, you do. And you know, I think the worst thing you can have happen to you is to stop feeling that, because I've certainly met artists that don't feel that at all. That they probably should.
Yeah, that's true. If you feel like, if it's the opposite problem where you feel like your stuff is good and it's not, like you're less likely to get good than if you just think your stuff sucks all the time.
Yeah, or stay good, which is such a sad problem. But
Yeah.
a lot of artists, you get older, and I've put so much thought into this over the years because I knew I can't do anything else, you know. So this was it. So I didn't want to not be able to do it, and I've seen so many artists fade, and I know exactly why, or at least I'm pretty sure I know why, and that is if you just draw yourself and you never study and you decide you know exactly what you're doing and you're an expert at what you do, eventually it's like handwriting. The older you get, unless you make a conscious effort, it will get sloppier and sloppier to the point where it's unreadable. And the same thing will happen with your art. And eventually you'll look back 10 years and you will not be the same person that created something that actually, you know, had some quality to it, and you won't be able to do it. I mean, you could go through the work of trying to relearn, and I think you could totally do it. An artist could do that. The problem is, for the most part, the artists that really fade like that, generally speaking, feel like they've made it, and you really don't want to let your ego get in the way of your progress.
Yeah.
And that happens for sure.
This question. Oh, go ahead.
I'm thinking he should maybe have some energy coming off his hand. What do you think?
Yeah. Whatever, man. What kind of energy is it? Like, what does this energy do?
I don't know. See, I was kind of hoping somebody would have an answer for what his power is.
So I shoot knowledge. I haven't heard anything back yet, but maybe I shoot knowledge at people. I don't know. That sounds really stupid, actually.
I'm thinking.
I mean, I'm a teacher primarily. But let's see. Let me see if John actually said anything about people's suggestions.
I'm gonna rough something in quickly, and then I can change it.
There's a question in here related to the previous one, kind of. Let's see. About like working with studios and stuff. So how do you get an internship at a comic studio, and do you have to be on a pro level, or do they help you improve and get your art up to that level?
Internships at comic studios just don't exist now.
Oh, wow.
And it's very sad to say that, because I got so much from it, and I know so many artists that did. So I wish I could say, you know, this is how you go about it, and it's, you know, but it's just not something that's really happening right now. And it was actually really unusual when it was happening. Image Comics, when they started, they had very, very deep pockets. They were selling through the roof. And so they ballooned really fast, and it made, they could basically sell anything. It didn't matter what they put out, it would sell. And so they were just getting anybody that they could find to draw a book. And so they started studios so they could actually just develop talent and get them to work on things. And so, you know, I learned so much that way, but it's just not something, nobody's been doing that for quite some time. It's been many years.
Interesting.
So yeah, unfortunately, that, like, my way of getting into the business just does not exist anymore. Now, there are other ways, and I think I would have made it in. I think anyway. I actually the weekend that I got hired, I fought for 2 years trying to get a chance, and another company, it was a small independent company, offered me a job that same weekend that I started at Top Cow as an intern. So I would have done that. It would have been a different path. I don't know where I would be now, but and that still certainly exists. I would say the best way to get work is conventions. You know, you bring your work to a convention. You can show it to Marvel and DC. That's a tough way to go. They don't necessarily really hire much that way, but it's certainly possible. The smaller companies are a great avenue for it. So you know, and there's also DeviantArt. There's Instagram. If you're doing work, and the truth is, really, if you're doing the kind of work that they want to publish and you're doing it well enough, they will find you. There are times, so I do a review stream where we review people's artwork, and something I've really tried to keep away from reviews is commenting on somebody's style, because it's not my business to do that. At the same time, it can be a little tough because I know that publishers publish certain kinds of work, and it's not just, you know, big superhero kind of work, that kind of thing. Like, they publish a range, but they definitely have the sorts of things that they publish and the sorts of things that they tend not to. And you know, I feel like it is good advice to say, okay, you know, decide what kind of artist you are, and then angle toward the kind of work that you're seeing being published. And you, once you get in, can get more and more creative with what you do, and find more of your own personal style. But I really recommend that you do the kind of work that publishers are already publishing to get in. Bill Sienkiewicz is a really great example of that. I don't know if you're familiar with Stan, but
Yeah.
okay, yeah, he's a painter.
Booth at Comic-Con every year.
Right, he's an absolute genius. When he started, he was a Neil Adams clone. I was a Mark Silvestri clone. You know, we were all clone of something. So, and he really got a lot of flack from people saying, you know, you just draw exactly like Neil Adams, but that got him in, that got him work, and then, I mean, obviously, you see where he is now, and he has been for 30 years. So, I think that's a really good way to go. And I don't know if it would have been easy for him to get work doing that, and his work is beautiful, but editors, they can have a tendency to lack imagination. It sounds like a terrible thing to say, but
is it their job to have imagination?
It is, but you know what? Editors have so many jobs. I mean, they need to make sure that you turn in the work on time, and so it's a risk to hire somebody new that you're unfamiliar with. They take a major risk in doing that. So, and you have to acknowledge that if you're a new artist, you need to be better than what they're publishing, because otherwise they'll just keep publishing what, you know, they know that artist that you think that you're better than, and you may be, that artist meets a deadline. You know, that's an important thing. So there are a lot of factors.
Yeah. So with internships, correct me if I'm wrong, but like the most beneficial thing is working alongside the professional artists there, right? Like just seeing what they're doing. So I guess people could get a similar thing now with like some online workshops. Like I know that Will Spataccio, Ryan Benjamin, you know Alex Sinclair, and one other guy I forgot. They have the Comic Pro Boot Camp, where they do like monthly workshops, and it's very affordable. I've been talking to Ryan Benjamin and Will for a while now, and so I think like that kind of stuff is like the internships might be going away, but there's new things coming up that kind of replace that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So you just got to be active in looking for that stuff and actually committing to it and doing those things, you know? Like, access.
I think it's actually, in a lot of ways, just as good as having an internship, because I watch so many people, most people quit that started at Top Cow where I started, because it's a difficult thing. You put your work out there, it can break people. I swear it almost broke me, you know. There was a time I thought, I'm just not going to make it, and you know, the drive to protect your own ego by quitting and saying, you know what, I could have done it, but I decided to go in this direction instead. It's strong. so that was a big negative. But I'm kind of going off topic here. I think what I really meant to say is, Mark Silvestri would walk around the studio and look at what we were doing, and this would happen probably once a week, not so often because he was working on his own book. He was very busy, and he would just give you a couple little tips. Work on this, work on that. Maybe this arm, and he would fix a couple things. He'd walk away, and I tell you, it's 10 minutes. That's what you would get. And he didn't invest a massive amount of time in people because, frankly, the people that were going to make it were going to make it. They didn't, yeah, you can help, but not everybody was going to make it. You just couldn't afford to invest too much into somebody that's not going to invest in themselves. And I think if you take one of those courses, Will Spataccio is phenomenal. He's great. Ryan Benjamin is great. They both worked in a studio system. They both know what they're doing. I think it's, in terms of what you would learn what you would learn in the studio.
Yeah. Ryan's coming to my studio tomorrow, by the way.
Oh,
little top secret knowledge there.
Yeah, that's
you're working on stuff. Like what you were saying, how it's almost as good. I feel like it might even be better online, and like not for everybody, but the fact that it's online, it makes it more accessible to everybody around the world. Because if you if the internet didn't exist and everything was just internships at studios, you'd have to be in the city. You'd have to be living there where that studio is in order to get that internship. And so only like a really small percentage of the people around the world can actually even participate in that. But now that it's online, like you could be anywhere in the world. You could be in a country that doesn't have any comic studios and you could study to be a comic artist because you have access to the internet. And I think that's such a big advantage now that is going to create so many more awesome artists in the next few decades. Mm-hmm. That like the education is just spread out around the world and it's accessible to everybody. I think it's so cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's see. Hey Dave, what is one perspective tip or advice you have gotten that made everything click when drawing dynamic characters in perspective? One advice, David, that made everything click. Well, I want to know that too.
That is a very difficult question. I have a whole video about drawing figures in perspective on my channel, and I really broke down everything that I know about it. For those videos, and frankly, for practical purposes, that is all that I do. I don't have some kind of other knowledge that I'm using at any time. I want to keep it as simple as possible and just something that really works. So, you could really, if you wanted to, you could draw somebody's head. Here's a cube, and I could run these to an actual perspective point that's still on the page, I think you can see it. Anyway, I could, and really do proper perspective for this whole thing, and then line up my eyes and line up my ear and do everything perfectly. It's just not a feasible thing. You really need to get to the point where you can just draw simple shapes in perspective, just out of your head. I'm trying to say perspective over and over again, but you get the point. And so for heads or bodies, you draw a body from the side. Obviously, it's pretty simple. You draw it from the front. It's wider, and I'm making this really quick. But the point is that you need to be able to turn these forms in space. Here it is from the top. I'm off the page. I'm sorry, but you know what? It's from the top. And if you can do that well, you can draw figures in perspective. And then it really is, to take it further than that, just, check out my video that I've got on drawing figures in perspective. It really breaks it down. I never really, frankly, there was one trick that I learned for drawing perspective for scenes that actually really did change everything. And, maybe I should tell you guys about that one. But for figures, there was never a time when I thought, okay, that's it. I think that it just kind of naturally flowed from drawing scenes.
Nice. Yeah, I just looked it up. The video is called How to Draw Figures in Perspective. So if you guys just type that into YouTube, it'll pop up. Go watch that video. That looks like an awesome video. Yeah. It's got 250,000 views already.
I was so afraid doing that. Some of these videos, the figures on them are like, they're so terrible because I can't draw, it's just little stick figures, but
they're in perspective, right?
But they're in perspective. Right?
Nice. I remember reading once that 4 comic pages a day was considered top tier performance. Does that hold true today, or was it ever true?
Never.
Never true.
Never true. If you can do 4 comic pages a day, it means you could do 4 books a month. That is unlikely. It's unlikely that they're going to hire you to do 4 books a month. You're doing half their line at that point. And there is no possible way you could match the quality of the artists that are not doing that. So there was a time, like Jack Kirby, I had heard could do like 10 pages in a day. And now I'm sure that he had one day where he did 10 layouts in a day, and he, fell asleep, and then it, everybody says that he would just do that. And like, I don't know, I could be wrong. I don't think he was doing 10 pages in a day. There's just no way. But what publishers want, they want 3 qualities out of every artist that they hire. And, the saying is you really only need to meet 2 of these qualities and be successful. I think if you can meet all 3, then you'll be around for a long time. So the first one is quality. And that is the most important, because there are so many artists out there. You need to be able to sell a book. It's an entertainment business, and if you can do work that people connect with and people are motivated to buy, that is a very big deal. It is the most important thing. And then timeliness is the next most important thing. And it's a mistake to think of timeliness and, you're very, very fast. You don't need to be. You just need to be honest. So if it takes you 5 days to do a page, okay, that's too long. Let's say it takes you 2 days to do a page. So you can't do a monthly book. What you can do is a run of 5 issues that they give you 8 months for. And then you take a break, and then you do another. Now, if the quality is good, they are more than happy if they know that going in. If you can only do a page every 2 days, and you tell them you can do a page every day, and they give you a monthly book, and all of a sudden they have deadline problems, they're not going to be happy. So it's about being honest, and they're really willing to work with artists. And I think they would rather work with a slower artist that's better than a faster artist that's not better. And a trap that artists run into, I've seen this happen to artists before, where if you work quickly, but the quality is not really the best, and you do that because an editor calls you up and says, we're desperate, we just need help with this. That's fine, but you can very quickly find yourself to just be like, they won't call you for jobs that actually that require any kind of quality or prestige or anything. They'll call you last minute and give you 2 weeks to do a whole book, and all of your jobs will be that way. Your life will be miserable, but they'll just see you as that guy. It's like, okay, well, we're desperate. The guy's not very good, but hey, at least you'll get it done. Yeah, you don't want to aspire to that. So no, 4 pages in a day. Look, everybody's different, whatever. No, you know what? I'm going to say, I feel like I could take a stand on this one. You can't do that many pages. It's not possible.
Yeah. Even with how fast David's hand moves, it's still not possible.
Yeah, no, not remotely. Yeah. I could do a page a day for a monthly comic. I tend to be slower when I ink myself, but I can do a page a day, and those are long days. Yeah. And I have to make decisions. As I'm working on pages, I have to say, okay, just to give you guys an example, I'm going to use the back of this one. I'm running out of room here. But to give you an idea of just how much room you have to give yourself more work, I can draw somebody. Here he is. We're looking up at him. And you can see a bunch of buildings around him. And he's standing, he's in a city. And there you go. And so I have to draw a bunch of buildings. And here's my guy. That would be my panel. Or I could draw that scene. I'm looking down at the guy. And now I'm drawing the ground below him, and all of the detail on the ground, the buildings coming up, and let's say I've got other people this is especially when things get difficult. I've got other people walking around past him. Well, now I need to draw all those people full figure all the way around him. Need to make sure that they all work on the same plane and really get that. I don't feel like I'm getting this across as how much more difficult it is to draw a scene like this than it is to draw a scene like this. And so I have to make those kinds of decisions all the time when I'm working on pages. Yeah, I can do the scene like this, and I'm doing twice the work, but it's going to be a cool shot. Or I can just cheat it, and, maybe I could even just zoom in really close, and my figure is much closer, and I can just eliminate all that background. And those are decisions that you can make, but you make them at your detriment if you do it too often. you achieve too often. Really need to get those scenes in that establish the, you know, the page and give people a sense of, what is it? Not reality, but believability. You know? Like they could imagine that it's real.
Yeah.
I really thought that example drawing was going to be more obvious. It really wasn't. But
I mean, it's pretty clear, actually. Like, one, you're just doing the heads of people walking by. The other one, you're drawing the full body.
Right, and there are some examples where it's much more stark. Just
Yeah.
how different changing the angle can make things, you know, how much more difficult it can make it. A superhero flying over a city, well above the city, you see a couple little tips of buildings and the superhero in the sky, or you look down at the superhero, you see the whole city below. That's better.
Yeah. Right. Okay, so Lee Davis says, "Hello, Mr. Finch. If you're not already going to talk about this, I'd just like to hear what your first course on Proco is all about and what you would like students to get out of it. Also, what are your plans for future courses on instruction, if any? Thanks a bunch. Thanks.
Well.
Thanks a bunch. I'm really looking forward to your instruction. I've been wanting to get into comics, and I think you're an amazing teacher and artist."
Thank you very much. Well, the course in a nutshell is how to draw a comics page, and I really try to put everything that I know about how to draw a comics page into it. And so there's a lot of things, basic concepts, and just really breaking down those concepts so we're kind of on the same page. You know, composition, blacks, and simple panel design, all those kinds of things, reading the script, and then traps that you can fall into, and how to look out for those and avoid them. And then from there, it's laying out a couple of pages from a script, starting with just a simple panel breakdown, and then the elements in the panel, and breaking it down in such a way that it's not overwhelming, because it can be, and it doesn't need to be. And then it goes into drawing a full page with detail, a couple of different methods, inking. So really the whole process. And it was really important to me because I get asked a lot of questions, and I've tried to do tutorial videos about how composition, different things like that. But when it's theoretical, which it always is in more of a just a tutorial kind of an example, it's not as valuable as a real world example. And so that's why I really wanted to have a couple of different pages in there, totally different types of pages, and with you during the video work through. And there are places where I really kind of get stuck, and it's embarrassing. Here I'm supposed to be teaching this stuff, but I think it's so important to see those places where, you know, I've been doing this for years, and I'm like, oh no, this didn't work, and now I'm having to find strategies to make it work and make it fit in a panel. I think that stuff is really important, and that's the kind of practical knowledge that really makes all the difference.
Yeah, it's interesting how we, as instructors, we get embarrassed, but like that might be actually more useful to the students to see how you figure that out. Than like they don't care, they still think you're awesome, right? They don't care as much as you do about that mistake, but
well,
they learn a lot from seeing.
I think so, and they're also bound to run into those problems.
Yes.
And so when you see somebody solving it and finding strategies to make it work, I think it's a useful thing to see.
Yeah, that's one thing that like people don't teach too much, huh? It's like when you do a demo of something, you try to make it like as flawless and streamlined as possible. But then in the real world, when you're actually doing projects, you're running into problems nonstop. You're just constantly solving problems, and like that's kind of. I'm glad you included that stuff. You didn't try to like redo it again to take the mistakes out, because I think that's so useful.
I was tempted. I really was.
You were. I know you were, because it's our ego, right? Like, like, oh, people are gonna think I suck.
Well, and I sent in when I did this stuff. I sent in the raw, unedited footage, and there are places I know where I'm mumbling to myself, like, "Oh no, you know."
Yeah, we're gonna make a reel of just those moments where you're mumbling. Just kidding, of course.
What am I doing with my life?
Yeah. Now's a good time to replace that link on the screen to the course, actually.
Sure.
So that people can go check it out as well.
So how are we doing for time? Did I replace it?
Yep. Yep. It's on comic page now. Yeah. Proco.com/comic page, and that's David's course that is now on pre-sale. You guys can get 20% off while it's on pre-sale here.
I don't want to keep you here all night, so I'm gonna.
Well, it's actually only 1:30 here.
Okay.
We're good on time. We usually do like 2 hours. I know my stream went on for like 2.5 hours the other day. So you're at 1 hour and 20 minutes so far. You're good. Are you planning on inking it or penciling?
You know what? Actually, that's a good question. I was just going to pencil it. I would never pencil this detailed if I was going to ink it for a live stream, certainly.
Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
So I was just going to pencil it. But I figured with 2 figures, I could probably do it a little quicker. You know, I didn't want to say, hey, let's do this until 9 o'clock at night, and you know, you're like, okay, we got to go. So
we got time. I'm sure people will want to see you take it to the end.
You know,
unless you have to go. Then.
No, I'm good. I just, you know, I'm used to. I usually do live streams with my wife, and she reads the questions. And I have like a hard 2-hour time limit. She gets pretty bitter if I go beyond. I'm pretty used to, you know, just not having the kind of time that I need.
Yeah. Well, we're still 40 minutes away from 2 hours, so.
All right, and yeah, I could do this for 3. I mean, like I'm fine, but.
Well, we can reevaluate at the 2-hour mark again.
Sure. Yeah, I think that sounds good.
Let's see. Hi, David. Any quick tips on? Oh, wait, that one. We answered that one. Let's see. Oh, let me check back in with John again. Okay. Oh, there are suggestions for powers. So I'm just gonna read them off here. So one is critiquing, critiquing powers. Okay. Marshall's power is to distort perspective. That's a good one. That's great. I love that. That's kind of like Inception, right?
You know, maybe I can get some buildings.
Yeah.
All over the place.
How would you distort perspective? That doesn't go with skulls, right? Like,
no,
it doesn't go with skulls. It'd be like boxy. It'd be more boxy, huh? It'd be like perspective, dude.
You know, we should have thought of that.
What?
Beforehand. I should have thought of that. I knew this was. See, I never planned well. I knew this was coming, and I've been looking forward to it, but it never once crossed my mind. Yeah, what kind of villain?
Yeah, I like the idea of him partnering up with Skelly. That's fun too. I mean,
Yep.
I mean, it makes more sense that he distorts perspective because that's his thing. But but personally, I like Skelly more because that's, you know, it makes me feel better because it's Skelly. But let's see. Another suggestion: Marshall's power is to hypnotize victims with great courses lectures. That's a reference to our podcast. Marshall reads the sponsored ads from Great Courses all the time, and he also just really likes Great Courses lectures, and he's always talking about them. Let's see. Someone else said Proko leads an energy gesture figure drawing army he shoots out of his arms. Wow. I shoot gesture drawings out of my arms.
I feel like I want to do that. I'm gonna have like energy here, and then have some figures flying out of it. Actually,
that's awesome. Actually, like shooting gesture drawings, and it's an army of gesture drawings that just like attack people. That's pretty fun.
I think it's gonna work.
Oh man, I would actually want to see maybe an anime, or not even an anime. I think it would look better in an actual like a movie, live action movie where there's drawings running through the scenes and like attacking people.
And nobody's ever done that. You know how hard it is to come up with something that nobody's done before?
Yeah, this guy, his name is Joshua Navarro. We're totally taking your idea, man. You did not copyright that, did you?
Just let you know, we're millionaires now, so thank you.
Yeah, that's so good. I love that idea. Oh man, those are great. That's a great combo too. Like if I shoot gesture drawings out of mine, and then Marshall distorts perspective, and he can like control the gesture drawings. Like we keep fighting each other in that way. That actually makes sense.
Wow.
You could have some cool, really epic battle scenes.
That
fighting with drawings.
All of a sudden, it's like an actual, you know,
an actual IP.
Yeah.
We should do this. We should actually do this. This is great. How much will it cost for me to pay you to do this? Oh my god. We should do like a full, like a book and see if people actually want to buy it. Sell it to DC and Marvel and Dark Horse.
Oh, you can't. But if you sell it to them, then when they make
That's theirs, yeah. Then they make a movie, and then they make
ideal.
Yeah, they'll make the $1 billion off the movie.
They will.
It's true.
You get a credit at the end, which is nice when that happens.
Credit, yeah. Okay, let's see. Man, I'm so glad we asked the audience. Those are great examples.
It's something I can actually get in there too.
Yeah.
Couldn't make it so that Satellite Power would only work
John,
in
let's give some
buildings
free
that
courses
are owned
to
by
those
that
two
company.
people that
As in
whoever
from the
said
company.
distorting perspective, and then whoever said, and then Joshua Navarro for the figure drawing armies out of my hands. You guys get free courses. I love that so much. All right.
Think about it.
What comic book stories have influenced you?
Probably the most influential story for me is the Phoenix Saga by John Byrne and Chris Claremont. It's what got me into comics. Other than that, I would be lying if I said stories influence me. It's really art. And so I could tell you, I love Simon Bisley's Judgment on Gotham that he did years and years ago as a painted book. All of Mark Silvestri stuff, all of Jim Lee stuff. Dale Keown, he did Hulk, which incredible stuff. And then he did a book called Pit for Image. It's a big one for me. Travis Terrest, he has not done enough work, but everything he's done. The amount of books that I have not even read the words, which is really terrible, Everything Greg Capullo does, I find it's impossible for me to read anything from Greg Capullo, though, and not actually end up reading it. His storytelling is so beyond. It's incredible. I just get engaged with the characters, just looking at the pictures, and then I'm reading the story. And most of his stuff is written by Scott Snyder, who is great. So, yeah, I'd say I'm a big fan of that stuff for sure. But for the most part, it's really art that I look for.
Nice. Does it make sense to try to train ourselves as sequential polymaths? How much should we practice being good at every aspect of comic creation? Pencils, inks, lettering, etc.
I think you're wasting. Okay, I hate making blanket statements.
Well, it's an opinion.
Okay, I'm going to just tell you my opinion. I'll just be flat with it. I might as well.
Yeah, he wants your opinion. He's asking you. So.
I think it's a waste of time to learn lettering. I don't think it's ultimately a waste of time. Down the road, you want to do something all yourself, then hey, great. I don't know why, truthfully, Okay, it might be. I wouldn't want to do it. But if you do, that's great. But when you're trying to learn, honestly, learning how to pencil, that is a job. It is not easy. People spend years just learning penciling and struggle, and I think it's a huge mistake to divide your attention among so many different skills. Nowadays, the way that I'm drawing this right now, I hate to say it, but it's a little outdated. Most artists do the exact same thing. It's the same process. They just do it on a screen. And
you mean on paper? That's outdated.
Right, yeah.
Oh, come on, man. I mean, yeah, I get it, but I'm so happy that you are doing this on paper. I was totally expecting you to be on a Cintiq or something and just sharing your screen. And then when I saw the paper, I was like, yes. I'm so happy that you're actually just showing like the traditional way of doing it.
Yeah, it's so much more enjoyable for me. And my opinion, again, is that I think that learning this is still so much better because I've drawn on an iPad, that kind of thing, and I can do it just as easily as this. But I can do this. And if you only learn how to draw on the computer, you put yourself in a position of having a very difficult time creating just an original piece of art or just sitting down at a table and drawing something to give to someone, I think it's a huge loss to not be able to do that. And the skill is so much the same, but being able to, let's say, this hand is way too big, probably is. I could just size it right down. Now, you'll notice my hands are enormous, but I do that all the time because it's superheroes, and I just like that look. And so I know it's distorted, but it's a choice. Anyway, I could say, hey, that hand's too big, or the editor could say that, and I just make a selection around it, make it smaller, and I'm done. Whereas for me, if I have to change that, I have to erase it. So there are disadvantages, but then I end up with original art. And I will tell you that if you, and your goal, I should hope, would be to be successful as a comic artist, or any kind of artist, and if people like what you do enough, your original art will have a good amount of value, and you are leaving a lot on the table if you don't have original art.
Looks like we got another huge fan. They used hashtag FinchFlockForever. Is that an official hashtag or?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Okay.
What was it?
El Padrino.
Hey, it's El Padrino. Good to see you.
All right. Says, hey Dave, any tips on drawing and rendering buildings?
Okay, here we go.
All right. Specs, of course, right here.
Now, yeah, this is kind of two different things. So I'm gonna draw you a diagram of how I do this because I can't. My screen isn't big enough. So here's my page, and here's my panel. Very small. And so I want one point to be kind of here, and maybe the other point to be here. So for a 2-point perspective, it's off of my page. So what I do is I just take another piece of paper, and I just use 2 pieces of tape like this, and then I use a bit of a longer ruler. And so what I'll do, and I've got a ruler right here, I just draw my point, and I draw a perspective grid. In this, I was talking earlier on about what changed perspective for me and what made it usable. And apologies for all the paint all over my ruler, but I've been really trying to paint lately, and I'm making a mess of everything with it. So here's one side of my perspective. I'm going to draw the other point kind of here. And once I get now, and this is a headache, I know. Nobody wants to be doing the kind of work that goes into laying out a page. You just want to draw the cool stuff, but this is, how long is this really taking me? A minute? Not long. And then I'll just draw vertical lines. I actually have a ruler to do this specifically that keeps it all parallel, but I can be pretty close just like this. And I'll do the whole area so it's drawn out as a grid. Keep moving here. All right, so that's my area. And I'm going to zoom in. A little better, you can kind of see what I'm doing here. So the next step for me is to just erase that down the same way I did with figures. And so I've got a grid here, and I could draw anything on top of that. I could draw the inside of a room. So here's my back wall, and I can see here's the base wall, here's the top of it, here's my other wall. I'll draw another wall going down here, maybe some stairs going up. Now, those would, strictly speaking, have their own perspective point. It would go to this point here. I would draw up and then find the point, and I could finish those stairs properly. I don't bother, truthfully. I fake it. Nobody's got time for that. So there's stairs right there. And I could draw a banister from those stairs. And there's the line. And I know you're asking about buildings, but I will show you what I mean in just a minute. And so here's my stairs.
Adding them because
and I could put a door here. And just notice when I'm doing all this, I've already got all the lines that I'm using already on the page. So I'm just quickly being able to rough all this stuff in. Maybe a picture on the wall. I could put a couch right here. Here's the back of the couch, arm of the couch, and we're getting pretty loose. But you get the point. Very easy. And a table in front of it. It's so easy for me to lay out a room like this or lay out any panel like this because I'm just using the existing perspective rather than I've got a wall. Okay, now I need to find that point. Here it is, and I can draw the line for that. It's just not a practical approach, and I never see anybody describe it this way. I actually learned this from an old copy of Hero magazine years and years ago. And yeah, it made a big difference for me. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use those same lines, and they're pretty light right now. I had to erase them again, and I'm going to draw a building on it. And so here's the side of my building. Here's the top. And the way I approach it is I'm going to draw some detail just on either side. I'm going to put a window right here. and I'm going to go just below that line into that line. And then what I'm going to do is just put another window here, just like this, another one here, and I'm just going to try and keep my spacing pretty even. And you'll notice I don't have enough room. I do this all the time. I don't have the time to be measuring up my windows, so what I do is I just erase the side of the building and just make it fit my windows. There you go. And so now I'm going to just draw the top line of all my windows, the bottom line, a line for the center, and I do it like an assembly line. And I can just start to put in a little bit of detail, all the windows at once. So I'm not drawing a whole window and then trying to recreate it. I'm just drawing them all at once, and it makes it much easier. A little bit of detail inside there. And now drawing the side of the building is obviously very easy. I can put another building here, still using the same perspective. I can draw another one up here, maybe a chimney, whatever, and I can just rough into that same area. And obviously I'm coming off my perspective. If I wanted to do this, I would have to use a little bit more perspective, but I can get so much detail in there just in the perspective that I had already established without having to reestablish any lines. Makes it very easy. But that's the real basics of it. I wish I could sit here and show you how I do shadowing and use negative space and really go into detail. But, you know, as a basic process, that really is it. I do, again, I've got a video on 1-point perspective on my channel. I need to do 2- and 3-point perspective. I've not done it yet, but it also really breaks down that whole process.
Yeah. One question, and I'm curious how this one relates to what you just showed as well. How do you learn composition? As in, what books or resources and practice exercises did you use to learn it? Where and how do you learn both theory and practical application? So they kind of want to know how you learn composition. I want to know, like, when you're doing these cityscapes, like you're plotting out the perspective and stuff, how are you thinking about the composition of it all? Make that interesting.
Well, I guess the first question would be, what is it that I want to focus on? And the script will usually tell me that. So if it's a figure, so, you know, if I've got a figure standing on top of a building, I'm going to draw a horizontal panel. And let's just say that's Batman. He's on top of a building. Well, I know that I kind of want to use a rule of thirds, a useful rule, rather than just putting somebody smack in the center of the panel or way off over here. And so I'm going to divide it into thirds, basically like that. It's not mathematical, but I'm going to say I want to put him here. So I'm just going to draw him here. Here he is. And his cape is kind of coming off here. And I don't want now I've got my rule of thirds here, so it can be a little distracting. I don't want my building to just be flat because it'd be boring. I could do that, but I think it'd be much more interesting to have him on a building that you're seeing kind of at an angle like this. And so now I need to fix my figure, which is why I wouldn't actually draw the figure in quite like that. So here he is, kind of in a little bit better perspective with the building. And, you know, maybe a window here, some chimneys. And what I want to do here is I want to create an overall block that has compositionally a shape to it. And it really doesn't yet. So I think it needs just a little bit more. And I can start to just kind of play with my shapes until I get something that compositionally just feels like it completes. And I want this to be the focus, so everything's kind of going to come around him like this and just be a shape. And then, because I've drawn something up here, I kind of want to focus down here for the rest of my detail. And so I would just draw